Crane vs. Crane is the 19th episode of the third season of Frasier. This is directed by Philip Charles MacKenzie, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about this episode. This episode has one of my all-time favourite Frasier moments in it, to the point where I watched it twice and I laughed for about 3 minutes. I absolutely love it. You might know which bit I mean, but I'll talk about that in a moment. In general, I did love this episode, but I don't love the direction it took, because I think it potentially is giving the wrong message. But at the same time, maybe not. So I'll explain what I mean by that when I get there as well. It starts off with Eddie running into the room because Martin has some food. And Daphne tells him that whenever she wants to eat food in peace, she just makes a noise, and she makes this la 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 noise, and Eddie runs, and this comes back in a moment. Frasier and Niles then come in, they are singing, Eddie runs out of the room, and we find out that Niles is testifying in the Safford case, and it's going to be broadcast on TV. He's really happy about this, and then we get the moment. Niles is talking about the case and explaining that Safford's son is concerned about his father's behaviour and wants to have him committed because he's displaying some very peculiar behaviour. And Martin says, and I quote, "God help you if you're over 50 and you do anything that seems the least bit odd to your family." And then he has some food. Eddie comes running in and he throws his head back and kind of screams the la 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 trick that Daphne taught him. But Niles and Frasier weren't in the room when Daphne taught him that. So to them, Martin has just done this really bizarre thing. And I don't know what's funnier, the noise he makes, brilliant performance from John Mahoney, or the fact that Frasier and Niles are witnessing this for the first time. I cried laughing. I absolutely adore it. We then go down to KCL for the first and only time in the episode. Roz has been talking to Frasier's callers. He's not very happy about that, but he's got something bigger with which to contend, because Mr. Safford, Sr., the father, has sent his lawyer to meet with Frasier and hopes that he, as the psychiatrist, will talk to him and declare that he is perfectly sane. And Frasier kind of agrees. Initially he wasn't going to, but he agrees to meet with Safford, and he does. And Harlow Safford is played by Donald O'Connor, and he enters the room on a fireman's pole. He's got a lot of fun quirks about him. He offers Frasier a lollipop, and Frasier brings up a few of the things that his son was concerned about. For example, he sold a property for a fraction of its value, and Safford said this is because he likes to help people out, and things seem to be going really well. And then Frasier asks to slide down the pole. And the next thing we know, we're back at the apartment. Frasier is uncomfortable from sliding down the pole multiple times, and he confronts Niles and he tells him about this, and Niles is understandably annoyed. And then they have this huge argument while Martin is trying to watch the boxing. Daphne is in the kitchen cleaning, I think, and she's listening to the radio, and Frasier and Niles go in there and carry their argument over the top of the radio, and then Martin comes in and shouts at them, and it's all very chaotic. We cut immediately to the courtroom scene. I really like how the courtroom scene was filmed. I thought it worked really well. Niles is playing up to the camera, and Frasier goes first, and he starts to talk very interestingly, and this is the direction I thought it was going in. So this is kind of bittersweet, because on the one hand I love the message, on the other I feel like they kind of counteracted their own message, but at the same time I can see the value. So allow me to explain. Frasier is saying that society questions somebody's ability to function if their behaviour even slightly deviates from the norm, which is true. If you don't fit into society's mould, you are considered to be unusual, and this is what Frasier is trying to argue, and I thought this was going to go down really well, and that's exactly the message they were going to give. Just because somebody isn't a cookie cutter example of everybody else, they're not exactly the same as everybody else, they don't take on the same shape as everybody else, it doesn't mean they don't have value, they're not able to function. And then things started to change, and Safford started to shout something out, not aggressively, he shouted out diabetes, and then he started to make train noises, and then he was behaving like a conductor. And there we have the answer, that actually maybe he does need some help, and maybe his son was, to a degree, right about his father's behaviour. I still don't think there's anything wrong with sliding down a pole and offering somebody a lollipop, but obviously, if somebody needs help, so be it. So I'm conflicted, because on the one hand, Frasier was saying just because somebody's different, it doesn't mean that they can't function, but then immediately they said, well, actually, look at Safford's behaviour. Clearly, that is the case. And clearly what Frasier is saying is not correct in that moment. So it kind of overrides these brilliant things that Frasier was saying. And I don't like that. I really thought they were going down this path of just because somebody's different, it doesn't mean it's a problem. And that's not where they went. And I kind of don't like the fact that Safford's behaviour kind of overshadowed that message. However, what I do like is that it is kind of helping to show that if somebody is behaving in a way that's unusual, particularly if it's unusual for them, then maybe you do need to look into whether this is safe, whether they need help or support, and clearly Safford did need some kind of help and support. So on the other hand, it's helping to highlight that if somebody is behaving in a way that deviates from their norm, it maybe not society's norm, but certainly their norm, then maybe it's something to look into further. And it's kind of raising awareness for the fact that some people may start to behave atypically for them, and it could be a sign that help is required. And of course, this is what was happening here. So I kind of understand if that's what they were trying to do, to raise awareness for certain behaviour changes and what that might indicate in some cases. If that's what they were doing, I understand it. I respect it. But at the same time, I do feel like Frasier's speech was kind of overshadowed by Safford's behaviour, and it kind of washed away the message Frasier was given, because we didn't have anything to reinforce what Frasier was saying. And we didn't have that balance there. And I don't think that people are now going to go away from this thinking, well, just because Safford did this, Frasier is speaking lies, and that's not true. I think the message is still clear, but it's not as powerful as it could have been. So I don't love it, but I can see the argument for why they did what they did with the episode. We then end with Frasier and Niles initially bickering and then complimenting each other, and then Niles finally has his say. So not too bad. It is a very interesting episode. I think it is very thought-provoking about how we treat people who are just different, and not different in the way that Safford is with his potentially worrying behaviour, but just different because they don't fit into what society expects. And I think that that's always something that's worth highlighting. And Martin lying is just perfect. Absolute perfection. I will absolutely... In fact, I'm going to go and watch it again now, that clip, because it's absolutely golden. Crane versus Crane may not be perfect based on what I wanted from the episode, but really, it's pretty fabulous, and I'm sure it's an episode that I'll always really thoroughly enjoy.